China's history is long and complex, and the understanding of Chinese history influences the way people view China today. Not to mention that foreigners don't know much about Chinese history. We Chinese don't always know our own history very well, and if we are not careful, we can be misled by official propaganda. Therefore, it is necessary to introduce some common myths about Chinese history. Okay, let's have a quick review of history. China is a country with a history of about 5,000 years, and today's China, generally referred to as the People's Republic of China. Chinese civilization began in the Yellow River and Yangtze River basin. At the beginning, there were many city-states in this land, and they were as numerous as stars in the sky, each one being a city, which were constantly attacking and annexing each other. These city-states were then transformed into feudal states, similar to the European Middle Ages. These feudal states were bound by blood ties and obeyed the Zhou king. At this time, China developed a unique world view in which the Son of Heaven resided in China and was subject to the mandate of heaven to rule the world. Here, China refers to the Yellow River and Yangtze River basin near today's Henan province, with China as the center, and the people living in the surrounding areas called barbarians. China plus the surrounding barbarians are located, that is, the world. The Son of Heaven received the order from heaven to rule the world. During the period of the feudal states, many religions arose, such as Confucianism, Moism, Taoism, and legalism, although the Chinese would never call them religions. Among these religions, Confucianism and legalism were the most influential. Confucianism emphasizes benevolent government, rights and duties, and it defends feudalism while opposing autocracy. Legalism, on the other hand, emphasizes the expansion of monarchical power and supports autocracy. Then, in 221 BC, Qin Shi Huang unified China, transforming the feudal states into a centralized autocracy and creating the emperor system. Thereafter, the emperor system was abolished until 1911. The emperor system was also unique to China and had a profound impact on Chinese history. The emperor system was designed to create a society of householders, meaning that each person had a household registration and farmed in the place of registration and could not leave it at will, and that the emperor could control the peasants by taxing them directly through the bureaucratic system. In 1911, the imperial period ended with the establishment of the Republic of China, but instead of realizing a republic, China entered a long period of warlordism, and then in 1949, Mao Zedong established the People's Republic of China to unify the country, and the Republic of China retreated to Taiwan in defeat, creating the present-day cross-strait standoff. Has China been a nation-state since ancient times? Today, in the eyes of the Chinese, the concept of China as a nation-state has existed since ancient times. For example, in 2023, China released a movie called Full River Red, which tells the story of the Song dynasty's resistance to the Jin dynasty. It created a wave of nationalism on self-media platforms such as TikTok. The historical background of the movie is simply that the Song dynasty in the south of China could not defeat the Jin dynasty in the north, and two factions emerged in the Song dynasty: the hawks and the doves. The hawks are represented by Yue Fei, while the doves are represented by Qin Hui. Later, Qin Hui framed Yue Fei and caused his death, and the doves won. Afterwards, the Song dynasty ceded territory and paid indemnities to the Jin dynasty. Many people on self-media platforms cursed Qin Hui and other peacemakers as traitors and openly beat up statues of Qin Hui and tourist attractions and claimed that they were at dagger stone with the Jin dynasty, and that the Jin dynasty people were monsters. And then a netizen who resides in northern China said, "I cursed the Jin dynasty people before, and later I realized that I have the DNA of the Jin dynasty people in me." In fact, the nation-state and identity were both introduced to China from the West. In the modern era, China had neither the concept of a nation-state nor the concept of Chinese people or the Chinese nation before that. These were artificially created by Chinese nationalists. Liang Qichao, a famous nationalist, said that the people at that time knew that there was an imperial government but not a nation. What did he mean? It means that the people at that time only knew that there was an imperial government in charge of them. For example, if there was a flood in Chongqing one day, the people living in Henan would not think that the people of Chongqing and them were in the same nation state. So the people in Henan would think that it was none of their business if there was a flood in Chongqing. It is especially important to note that the previously mentioned idea of the Son of Heaven residing in China and being commanded by heaven to rule the world does not have the meaning of a contemporary nation-state, but merely represents the location where the Son of Heaven resides in the center of the world, hence the name China. The earliest Chinese identity was based on the dissatisfaction of the Han Chinese, the main body of the Chinese Empire at that time, with the foreign rule of the Qing dynasty, and therefore the earliest so-called Chinese were Han Chinese. But nationalists felt that if this were the case, China would lose a great deal of territory. Why? Because the Qing dynasty ruled over a very large territory, including many territories not inhabited by Han Chinese. These territories include Tibet, Xinjiang, Mongolia, Manchuria. After removing these territories not inhabited by Han Chinese, China's territory would become very small. Thus, after the establishment of the Republic of China, these nationalists claimed that the Han, Manchus, Mongols, Tibetans, and Hui were all Chinese, that is, a five-ethnic republic, and reinforced the construction of the nation with the myth that the Chinese people were all descendants of the Yan Emperor and the Yellow Emperor, who were the legendary ancestors who ruled over China in the 3rd millennium BC. Today's Chinese have always believed that they were no different from the ancient Chinese and that there is a blood relationship between the two. This is a kind of thinking that uses the result to infer the cause. Because we are now Chinese, we used to be Chinese. They missed the point that in the past there was no such thing as the modern concept of national boundaries, and different groups of people would integrate with each other, as was the case in ancient Europe. Through invasions and other means, different groups of people would merge, which simply means having sex, and then producing the next generation, and so on and so forth. And the final group of people produced would be very different from the original group of people. For example, in ancient China, during Wei, Jing, and North and South dynasties, there was the Great East Asian Migration. At that time, the Han Chinese migrated to the south, while the nomadic people in the north of China occupied the north, and at the same time, the various ethnic groups merged with each other. Therefore, the Han Chinese today are already the result of the fusion of many different races, and their bloodline has long been impure. Has Taiwan been a secret and inalienable territory of China since ancient times? In fact, it was only during the Qing dynasty that Taiwan was incorporated into China. The Chinese government has always preferred to use modern concepts such as national boundaries to trace to whose jurisdiction a given territory belonged in the past so that it can be regarded as part of China. Obviously, this is not right. For example, during the Yuan dynasty, China was ruled by Mongols. At this time, Chinese boundaries were unusually large. Chinese netizens often sign on the internet about how Outer Mongolia was once Chinese territory and how glorious China used to be. The Mongols were on the verge of fighting their way to Europe, and many Chinese even regarded Genghis Khan as a Chinese. Generally speaking, foreign scholars regard both the Republic of China and the People's Republic of China as two regimes in China. What happened between the two was a civil war. What those two countries are fighting about is who actually owns the sovereignty of China. However, recently, the Republic of China on Taiwan no longer wants to fight for China's sovereignty and wants directly independence. This triggered a strong resentment from the Chinese Communist Party. At this time, the People's Republic of China is under authoritarian rule, while the Republic of China has long been democratized and transformed into a democratic country. Rather than wanting independence, Taiwan does not want to lose its constitutional democracy and be ruled by a dictator. We do not yet know what the future fate of Taiwan will be. We are witnesses to history and writers of history.